First, Josh Heupel ended the drought against the Gators. Then he reversed the curse of the Crimson Tide. Now will Tennessee lift the final hex against Georgia? Welcome to the Volunteer State. I'm Tennessee beat writer Adam Sparks, along with John Adams of the Knoxville News Sentinel. It's Georgia game week. For the past 8 years, this week started with hope and ended with disappointment for the Vols. So will Tennessee ever beat Georgia again? Well, didn't we ask the same about the Florida game? If you remember, UT lost 16 of 17 to the Gators before finally beating them in 22 and 2024 under Heupel. Didn't we ask the same if UT would ever beat Bama again? UT lost 15 straight in that rivalry before finally beating the Tide also in 2022 and 2024. So if Heupel can free Tennessee from those albatross, why not this one? John, what is your confidence level now that we're in the middle of Georgia week, that this is the year that Tennessee finally takes down Georgia? They've lost straight. Does this end it this week?
Yeah, when I look at this game, I really believe Tennessee has a better chance than it's had at any time during the streak. I mean, those games, Tennessee didn't just lose those games, it lost them handily. It wasn't really that competitive against Georgia. So I think this will be a really close game. I don't know if Tennessee can pull it off. The thing is, I just don't know how good Tennessee or Georgia is right now. We've seen them against outman competition. And a word of caution in evaluating Georgia. In past years, even Georgia's national championship teams back-to-back in 2021 and 22, Georgia had games that it just sleepwalked through. It almost lost a game to Missouri that way, a vastly overmatched Missouri team. Kirby Smart is not just the best coach in the game right now. He's also, I think, the best big game coach. He gets his team really fired up. He gets it ready to play, really focused. And so the Georgia team, I watched the first 2 weeks. I wasn't impressed at all with it in a lot of different ways. But I just don't think Tennessee will see that kind of Georgia team.
Yeah, the word caution, I like that. I think we could put the word caution on a whole lot of things this week. A word of caution of thinking Georgia's down, because you mentioned we've seen it before. I mean, last year Georgia lost. I think it was the double digits to Ole Miss right before this game. And everybody said, "Okay, Georgia's down." 2 years ago, they were terrible against Missouri early in the year. You say, okay, this is the year that Tennessee beats Georgia. In 22, I think there was a similar game. Yeah, Georgia always has one or a few of these games early in the year where you think, well, Kirby's not going to have it. And then come the Tennessee game, the Florida game, I don't know, maybe Auburn or Georgia Tech or one of these rivalry games. Kirby just knows how to rev his team up. And you're right. He's phenomenal on game day. And Tennessee has just not, last year they had a half, but they didn't have a full game. And it's looked like at times that Tennessee has had sort of a way to win a 20-minute game against Georgia. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and if you remember, Adam, you go back to 2020, Jeremy Pruitt's first team is up on Georgia at halftime to start the game, and we're thinking, are you kidding me? And Tennessee had opened already with 2 wins, and you think, oh my gosh, this could be monumental. And then here came Georgia like gangbusters and dominated the second half from start to finish.
Yeah, I mean, okay, let me get back to the word caution. A word of caution if Tennessee starts well. Check out this stat, John. You probably already know Tennessee in these 4 meetings between Heupel's Vols and Kirby's Bulldogs. Tennessee has scored on its opening drive all games. 3 touchdowns, 1 field goal. That is 24 of their 50 points in those 4 games have come on the opening drive. That's 42%. almost half of Tennessee's points in this game have been on their opening drive, and it's been all Georgia after that. So, a word of caution if Tennessee comes out and goes 75 yards and gets in the end zone. That's how this normally starts, and it normally doesn't go much beyond that. I mean, Jalen Wright 2 years ago, we remember, had the 75-yard run on the first play, and that's pretty much all the offense that Tennessee had. So a word of caution there that Tennessee's got to play 4 quarters, not a quarter. A word of caution of, boy, and I hesitate to say this because we fed it so much, but a word of caution of thinking that Joey Aguilar is en route to a Heisman campaign. He could be legendary if he wins this game, and we'll get to that later in the pod. But he played really well against Syracuse. He played, flawlessly almost against ETSU. Bad opponents. And so much of what we've done lately is compare him to Nico, which is completely fair for how those two guys swapped. But now you compare him to the SEC, and that's just sort of a different thing. I'm not saying he's going to fail or succeed. I think he'll probably play pretty well. I mean, if he has a C performance or a B minus performance, that seems, I think that seems reasonable to expect that because he's played pretty well. But he has not been pressured yet, not really. And that pocket closes in a lot quicker in SEC play, and certainly against Georgia. So a word of caution of that. And on the other side, a word of caution of thinking that Georgia is going to produce in the way that it always has. Stetson Bennett's not over there. Carson Beck's not over there. Gunnar Stockton is, and like Joey Aguilar, he's never played. He's in an SEC game. And John, I think you've actually watched Georgia a little more than I have. Are we to think that Gunnar Stockton is going to be able to throw the ball downfield? Because so far of what I know, Gunnar Stockton has. It's like a third of his passes are behind the line of scrimmage. It's been dink or dunk. Do we know whether or not he can get the ball downfield?
I think he has a strong arm. I don't see where he's inadequate in getting the ball downfield. My concern with him would be from a Georgia perspective, how well can he read a defense? How well can he see the open receiver? How well can he handle all the noise and hoopla of this game? And whereas he hasn't played in an SEC game, he has played in college football playoff games. He looked at times against Notre Dame last year in the playoff. I thought he looked out of his depth. I just at times I thought that. But he's got all the intangibles, and he is a running threat. I will be curious as to how Tennessee plays him. I think Tim Banks is really good at dialing up blitzes and that kind of thing. Pressure him. You'd want to put some pressure on him, certainly. But again, we'll use that word caution, but you got to contain him because he can run. He's not as elusive as a Stetson Bennett was, who really hurt Tennessee with the scrambling a couple of years in a row. But he's a pretty strong runner for his size. He's a sturdy guy. So he can hurt you on the ground. So if you pressure him, you got to do it with carefully. And also, but I just wonder if you show him a lot of different things defensively, maybe draw back in coverage and say, okay, go ahead and throw it. Can he make that read? I'm not sure if he can. How can you be sure? How can you be sure about Joey Aguilar? I do think this is one game where Tennessee might miss its All-American cornerback, Jermod McCoy. I mean, its cornerbacks have played well, no doubt about it. Colton Hood, Ty Redmond, the freshman. But I think Georgia's got some receivers like Zachariah Branch who can really burn you on one play. He can take a bubble screen and turn it into a touchdown. He's got the speed to beat you deep. So they're going to face some different challenges, even though we're uncertain about Gunnar Stockton.
Yeah, I mean, unless something weird changes, well, nothing weird's going to change because Jermon McCoy's out, Ricky Gibson's out. Tennessee's going to start Colton Hood and the freshman Ty Redmond at corner. I didn't see Jalen McMurray did not play corner that I could tell in the ETSU game. I kind of thought he would get some snaps there because he would be their third corner and maybe even their second corner if Redmond didn't play well. But Redmond well that they're going with him. But I think you could see McMurray slide over there if need be, and then Boo Carter would move up into the star position. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, this is one of those games they really needed at least Gibson healthy, if not McCoy and Gibson healthy. So that could be a mismatch. I mean, on paper, Georgia's receivers against what Tennessee has left at corner would be a mismatch. But we don't know. We're 2 games in, and so far Tennessee's corners have played really well. It's on the other side of the ball. I mean, Tennessee absolutely has to, if not win the line of scrimmage, they have to at least match up well enough with Georgia. I mean, if you look at the last especially, Georgia has overwhelmed Tennessee up front on both sides of the ball, really. Tennessee has been outrushed. Georgia has outrushed Tennessee by about 60 yards a game in those last 4 meetings. Georgia has 18 sacks in those 4 games. Tennessee has 3. So it's really been a line of scrimmage game that Georgia has always won handily. And you sort of get into a little bit of a cat and mouse game, I think, between Heupel and Kirby, because John, we look at it, and Kirby's defense, whether personnel or scheme, or probably a combination of two, has solved Josh Heupel's offense time and time again. That first year in 2021, Tennessee did throw the ball for over 300 yards, but there were adjustments after that, and Kirby has had no problem with Tennessee's offense since then. Tennessee likes to have those wide splits. They like to spread everybody out. And usually that's an advantage because if you're playing like Mississippi State or Kentucky or whoever, their corner spread way out with Tennessee's wide receiver is usually somewhat of a mismatch in favor of Tennessee. You get an isolation there, and if you have to have safety help to bring out there, and then the numbers are better in the box for Tennessee, and then they can run the ball or throw in the middle of the field. So that's usually an advantage for Tennessee. In the Georgia game, it's sometimes been a disadvantage because in the way that other opponents don't want to be one-on-one Tennessee, Georgia invites that. Their corners match up well physically and just in terms of coverage skills, match up well one-on-one with Tennessee. You've got early round NFL guys out there. And so that has not worked well against Georgia, just to spread everybody out. So Kirby adjusted to that, and in Heupel's second season, worked really well against Tennessee's offense. Tennessee has not thrown the ball well since then. You saw last year Tennessee go into a little more of 2 tight ends and more tight formations, somewhat of what we saw in the Syracuse game. I think we could see that again. And so it is a cat and mouse where does Heupel stick with what they've done against other opponents in the past but done poorly against Georgia, or do they go to tight formations, which they've sort of transitioned to lately, but then you're sort of going, man versus man physicality type game with Georgia. It's going to be fun to see the chess match here because Kirby has gotten the best of Josh Heupel and his offense at least the past 3 times after the adjustments were made after the 21 game. But some of it comes down to personnel, and Georgia is very talented on defense like they always are. I don't think they have as much depth as past years. I think the transfer portal has thinned out Georgia a little bit. I don't know the depth matters that much in a week 3 game. But I think the talent is a smaller margin of gap there than there has been in the past. I mean, John, offensively, is this just as simple as like Tennessee has to run the ball to get a leg up in this game?
Yeah, I really think that's crucial, Adam. And Tennessee, again, against competition that was not high caliber, but it did control the line of scrimmage on both sides, but it ran the ball effectively. It's run the ball effectively against most teams. What Georgia's been able to do in the past against Tennessee, uh, it doesn't need that much help from its safeties against the run. Those guys can stay back and defend the pass, help out in coverage because its defensive front has been so dominant. You go back to its first championship team in 21, Jordan Davis, 6'6", 350, a first-round draft pick, uh, backed up by Jalen Carter, about the same size, and another first-round draft pick. Now they're the defensive tackles for the defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. You mentioned that depth. No, I don't think Georgia has a kind of depth it did, but I don't think any teams do. So because of the transfer portal. But when you got guys like that, I mean, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, they can make plays on the sideline. I mean, they were huge guys who could also run. And I don't know that Georgia has a player that caliber, but it still has players on that front seven that are going to play in the NFL. It still has the kind of guys that it will probably feel comfortable, at least in the outset, of saying, okay, I trust them to handle the run. And our secondary guys can defend the pass and work on their ball hawking skills. But I think Kirby will trust the defensive front to do what it's always done against Tennessee. Now, Tennessee might be able to change that approach. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, yes, there are NFL caliber guys on Georgia's defense. There's plenty of them. There's a number of former 5 stars, high 4 stars in terms of recruiting rankings over there. But yeah, I don't know that they have the dominance and depth there. We may change your mind, a month from now after they get some more games under their belt. Again, this early in the season, it's sort of hard to tell who the dominant players on either side are. I was trying to think. I got a lot of questions, and John, I know you've gotten this question this week too. What do you do with David Sanders if he's healthy? The available report comes out Wednesday night. This is a conference game, so the SEC requires teams to put out a quote unquote availability report, which is essentially an injury report. So we'll get some of that Wednesday on David Sanders, Jackson Moy, and others for Tennessee, and then we'll get a new report Thursday night, Friday night, and then before the game on Saturday. No, regardless of what it says about David Sanders, I'll believe it'll be a game time decision either way. He's had what my understanding is a stinger, a shoulder injury, which can flare up. And really, it can be fine for a while and then flare up, and then you lose some strength in that side of your shoulder, your arm, and it can take you out of a game. And apparently that's what's happened the last 2 weeks. So whatever the injury report says, it's still going to be a coin flip whether or not David Sanders plays. If he does, that is a 5-star recruit, the number 1 tackle in his class, yet he is a freshman who has not played yet. His first snaps, if he played this week, would be against Georgia, it's a pretty big ask of a freshman, even a uber talented one. John, I've been asked, as I'm sure you have, what do you do with David Sanders? Do you start him, or do you wait and see if he's needed? So far, this offensive line has performed well against inferior opponents. 2 games in, rushed for over 500 yards, no sacks allowed. John, what do you do if David Sanders says I'm 100% ready to go and it's Saturday? Do you start him as intended in preseason, or do you say, hold on, let's not throw you out there against Georgia and you stick with what you have? Which way do you go?
Well, it's not so much about how good David Sanders will be. I think everybody speaks so highly of him, and not that many guys can come in from high school and start as a true freshman, but apparently that's what he was going to do if not for the shoulder problem. But to me, offensive line is is a unit where continuity matters. Uh, you want these guys to be in sync. They've still got individual battles to win, but I just think of them more as a unit than I do individuals. So I wouldn't want to disrupt what's happened already. Now, if there's an injury, that's a different story. But going in, I would go in there honestly with the idea you won't have David Sanders. You're going to go with the ones who've already played and proved themselves. But maybe they think he's so good that we need to go ahead and put him out there. But I would be real concerned about just disrupting an offensive line that's performed so well first 2 weeks.
Yeah, late in spring, all the way through the offseason and well into camp, the thought was always that David Sanders is one of the top 5 linemen on this team. Therefore, he should be starting if everybody's healthy. But yeah, when you add the circumstances to the fact that he hasn't yet, this line has been good so far. I'm risk averse, so I wouldn't mess with it, John. I would start the 5 that they've started the first 2 games, and then sub in David Sanders when you see that he's needed. In other words, Tennessee will score on the opening drive. Everything's great. Then they'll go 3 and out, and then the third drive, you put David Sanders in and see if that rejuvenates everything. I thought this was an interesting take on this because I've looked at this a few different ways, but I hadn't looked at it this way. I'll give some attribution to this. Brent Hubbs, our buddy Brent Hubbs, he and I were talking about this today between press conferences, and me and some other media members that cover UT were sitting around going back and forth on this and debating what they should do with David Sanders. And the way that most of us have looked at this is how are you at tackle if David Sanders is in there or not in there? They're fine at tackle right now with Jesse Perry. Well, if you put David Sanders in there, does then his inexperience then expose Joey Aguilar in the run game because maybe David Sanders isn't ready? Hubbs had a good point, which he looked at this sort of, I think, backwards, which is, how do you feel about guard? Are you the interior of the defensive line for Georgia has been, that's been a problem each of these matchups. It's not been the edge as much as it has been the middle. And so maybe it's not how good or not good you are at tackle where David Sanders is. What's your best combination at guard? And if Wendell Moy and Jesse Perry are your best 2 guards, absolutely your best 2 guards, which that was supposed to be the starting guards, then you move things around to put those 2 at guard because that's where you've got to be solid. And then David Sanders will be fine at tackle. Sham Umarov is sort of was the fill-in guy here. He was a backup. They put him in at left guard, which moved Wendell Moy from left guard to right guard, Jesse Perry from right guard to right tackle. You moved all these pieces around. Is Umarov is he your best option at guard, or do you gain something by bumping Perry in there and having Moy and Perry? If you're better at guard with Moy and Perry, maybe you just do that. And you don't make who's best at tackle your priority. It was something that, in the debate between a lot of us, Hubbs brought up, and I thought that's a kind of a different way of looking at it. And I will say Glenn Ellerby, Tennessee's O-line coach, is always thinking of who are my best 5 in the best 5 spots, and he's willing to move guys around, and that's paid off in the first 2 games because those guys were completely prepared to switch up positions at a moment's notice. And so who's your best left guard? Is that Moy? Probably. Who's your best right guard? If it's that Perry, then maybe you need those 2 guys there. And do you lose much by putting David Sanders right tackle? It's just something to think about. Again, I'm risk averse. I would go with what's been working. I would be okay with putting David Sanders in after the game has started, but I would start off with the guys that they've been going with. So different way of looking at it. John, I want to throw these hypotheticals because this week we've looked at like a lot of the reaction of Joey Aguilar and his family the first time at Neyland. Videos are floating out there of Joey's mom crying and Joey's grandmother learning to sing Rocky Top and her crying and this love fest around the Aguilars, which I completely get. If Tennessee beats Georgia, how does that change Joey Aguilar's life? What do you think?
For the better. He becomes an instant Tennessee legend. I thought about this earlier before Joey had played his first game at Tennessee. Other than 1998 national championship team, one of the most famous Tennessee teams was the 1985 bunch because had All-American Tony Robinson at quarterback. He gets injured, is lost for the season. Daryl Dickey comes in, and they become the Sugar Vols. They roll to the SEC championship. He fills in tremendously well. They upset Miami. I actually covered that game. I was in Jacksonville, Florida as a columnist at the time, but I covered that game. They just blew out one of the more talented teams Tennessee's ever faced in the Sugar Bowl. And then there's another quarterback story that comes to mind too. 4 years of Peyton Manning, and future NFL Hall of Famer, one of the all-time great quarterbacks ever to play the game. Tennessee loses him and brings in T. Martin. Not as talented, but T. Martin's the one that won a national championship. So Aguilar has the potential. His story would be even better. Now, there would be more work to do, but I really think, unless there's a rash of injuries, if Tennessee beats Georgia, I think it's a strong playoff favorite. And then Joey Aguilar, legendary status. If he takes his team to the playoffs, he's a Tennessee legend right away. And his family is as beloved as he is. The irony is that Nico Iamaleava leaves Tennessee for Hollywood, goes home to the West Coast. But the real Hollywood story and the best Hollywood movie would be the Joey Aguilar story, who leaves L.A., had no choice once Nico joined the Bruins, and he comes to Tennessee and has a success. It's the best story in college football.
Is this column already written? I'm doing this in real time right now.
No, I'm doing this in real time. I didn't write it. No, I'll wait and see what happens. Maybe I'll write it later.
Yeah, I mean, the contrast between these two. The truth is that there's some gray area in here, some nuance, but nuance does not play well. We like
no.
We like good stories and good contrasts. I heard somebody this week say, I love the Aguilars because unlike Nico's family, the Aguilars are like working class, middle class. Well, Nico's family was also working class, middle class.
Yeah.
But it's hard to see it that way because Nico made $6-7 million from Tennessee. So he's not middle class. But yeah, the contrast, boy, they really paint a pretty stark narrative, which is one guy, one quarterback in his family is grateful to be at Tennessee, so grateful that they're shedding tears over the fact that he gets to run through the T. Can you imagine? My boy gets to run through the T. It's a dream come true. And the other quarterback in his family, for a raise, for millions, the other shed tears over running onto the field in Neyland Stadium. That contrast, I think Tennessee fans are enjoying quite a bit now. So if Tennessee wins, Joey Aguilar has mythical status. What else happens if Tennessee wins? Let's say the hypotheticals. I think number one, Tennessee is then legitimately at the top of the SEC race. Because I mean, a handful of SEC teams have already shown some weaknesses. A few of them have losses already. But if you knock off Georgia head to head, I think you're at the top, legitimately at the top of the SEC race. You're absolutely a college football playoff contender. You're projected to be in it. John, what would be if Tennessee beat Georgia? What does the rest of the schedule look like? College game day is here this week. I think the Oklahoma-Tennessee game would then be circled as one of the games of the year potentially. I know that's well on down the line, but there would be some potential for that game to suddenly take on even more meaning besides just the Josh Heupel stuff. I mean, when I see what Mateer is doing at Oklahoma, if Tennessee beat Georgia, I think that's Oklahoma at Tennessee is instantly one of the games of the year, right?
Oh, there's no doubt about it, but I'll use the cautionary term again with Oklahoma. The schedule is too much. By the time Oklahoma gets to Tennessee, it won't be a playoff contender. I don't believe that. And I love John Mateer as a quarterback. He's Johnny Manziel without the addiction issues. He's the ultimate playmaker. He runs with power. He's elusive, and he's not afraid to make any throw, to his detriment sometimes. But he's the kind of guy you love watching play football. So Oklahoma, a really solid defense. People saw that against Michigan. Brent Venables can do some stuff defensively. However, Oklahoma's 8 conference games, all 8 of its conference opponents are ranked right now in the top 25 of either the coaches poll or the media poll. I've never seen a schedule like that in the SEC ever, and I've been watching this a long time. So I think also John Mateer, he carried the ball 19 times against Michigan. The rest of the Sooners carried it 21. I just don't think he can hold up. I hate to squelch that build-up you're trying to promote for Oklahoma, Tennessee in November, but I just think Oklahoma could have a hard time getting there. However, it's the best game remaining at Neyland Stadium. And even if Oklahoma drops off, it's a bigger game than Arkansas. So I just think it's still the game. But when I look at the schedule for Tennessee, we've been talking about this schedule since right after last season. It's about as accommodating as you can get in a league as staunch as this one, and with an 16-team league. It's just, it's lighter. It's certainly much lighter than what Oklahoma has. So that's why I say beat Georgia, and Tennessee is a strong favorite, not to just make the playoff, but to play in the SEC championship game, which doesn't have the same allure it once did now that we've got our 12-team playoff.
Yeah, if Tennessee beats Georgia, why can't Tennessee go beat an Alabama team that has shown that it's maybe not as good as some past Alabama teams? If Tennessee can beat Georgia, why can't Tennessee just run the table? I think that would be a legitimate topic.
Sure.
So if Tennessee beats Georgia, Joey Aguilar will be a mythical figure. Fans will storm the field. Goalposts will go down. Tennessee will be a top 10, who knows, maybe a top 5 team, will be projected to go to the playoff. If Tennessee loses to Georgia, I think we can predict what the criticism will be. A lot of it will be focused on the fact that Tennessee, in terms of physicality, cannot match up to Georgia, probably in a similar way to it couldn't match up with Ohio State, that its receivers get manhandled, that it cannot protect the quarterback well enough. Some of it, there will be some critiques on recruiting, even though Josh Heupel's got a top 7 or top 8 class right now. He's putting together the best recruiting class he's had. There would be critiques that they have not piled up enough 5 stars to play to the level of Georgia and Ohio State and the like. I think those are critiques that will come out. Now, if Tennessee loses this game, they're still absolutely still in the playoff hunt because of the schedule, because there's plenty of games for them to win on the schedule. There's not many you would circle to say they're probably going to lose that game. We've already mentioned probably a couple other harder games, which is Oklahoma and Alabama. Those would both be winnable. So, John, I just think if Tennessee loses, the criticism is going to be pretty obvious. They're close, but they're not close enough. Recruiting still needs more. Program needs to build more. Josh Heupel's got to tweak his offense further to get over the hump. Is that? I mean, it's pretty predictable, isn't it, John? Isn't that where we're probably going if Tennessee loses this game?
Well, one thing in Tennessee's favor when we're talking about a post-game critique is that Georgia's pretty much manhandled the Vols for 8 consecutive games. It didn't just beat them; it completely had its way with Tennessee. So, if this is a close game, and I think it will be, and Georgia prevails, I don't think the criticism will be so bad. I think it will be more like, well, Tennessee's definitely closed the gap against Georgia, missed an opportunity, but now it's proved it can hang in there. It's proved it can be competitive. Remember what we saw, not just against Georgia, but what you saw, your last memory of the 2024 team was being overwhelmed in Columbus, Ohio, against the future national champions. And that showed, okay, Tennessee's pretty good and it made the playoffs, but here's what a championship team looks like. I don't expect people will have that take after this game because I just don't see Georgia dominating Tennessee. Can see it winning, but not dominating.
So that takes us up right into to our picks for this game. This is in the category of I'll believe it when I see it. I tend to pick the Tennessee at Florida game this way until I see Tennessee winning the Swamp. The matchups don't matter. I'll believe it when I see it. This is in that category, and I've seen Tennessee lose, as you mentioned, 8 straight. They've lost the 4 between Kirby and Josh Heupel in roughly the same way. So, do I see a path of Tennessee winning this game? Absolutely, and that would include a heavy dose of the Neyland Stadium crowd providing a home field advantage. It would be one factor would be that Tennessee, I think, has closed the talent gap a little bit. And it would be Tennessee running the ball well and finally getting to the quarterback and rattling a Georgia quarterback, which has not done in a number of years. So I could see the path to Tennessee winning this game, but I'll believe it when I see it. That Kirby Smart doesn't have his best come to Knoxville because he always has that. So I'm picking Georgia to win a close one. I think my official pick was official pick. Georgia 27, Tennessee 21, I believe is what I've got this week. So close game, back and forth, single digit margin. But I've got Georgia winning. John, what do you have?
Well, kind of like your take. I've missed a lot of picks through the years by thinking, okay, this is finally the season Tennessee gets Alabama, or this is the final season Tennessee wins. This is the season Tennessee finally wins in the Swamp. Kind of like this is the season where Tennessee men in basketball make the Final Four. And I keep missing those predictions. So I'm kind of like you. Believe it when I see it. So, Tennessee's certainly capable of winning this game. There's not a doubt in my mind about that. But I just think the track record, not just of Tennessee's in this series, but Kirby Smart, second year with Georgia, started in 2016, lost on a Hail Mary to Tennessee in Athens. since then he hadn't lost to Tennessee, but also his record since starting the 2017 against his four biggest rivals, Tennessee, Auburn, Florida, and Georgia Tech, is 30-2.
Ooh.
I think that's a hard track record to go against. But I don't think Tennessee has ever been in a better position to beat Georgia. But I know I wrote that and said that a lot of times when it came to winning in the swamp. I said, well, this is the time. Florida's not that good. And then lo and behold, Florida wins again. So we'll see. But I'm kind of like you. I'm in that. You got to show me first.
Yeah, the crazy thing is if Kirby Smart heard the last 5 minutes of our podcast here, which I'm sure he listens, and heard us both pick Georgia to win, somehow that message would get manipulated to his team into nobody believes in you guys. Everybody doubts you. Nobody thinks you can beat Tennessee. That's the message he would get across. And that's what makes him a great coach. Lie in that way and have and I say that in a loving way. He can lie in that way, and his players believe it because they're going to believe that they're an underdog coming to Knoxville. There's no doubt about it.
You know what? I bet Kirby Smart, when Georgia went out against TCU in that 2000 and after the 2022 season, when it actually put TCU out of the football business. It's almost like you don't even should even field a team. I don't remember the final score. It's something like probably 65-0 or 3 or something like that. But anyway, he probably, when Georgia left that locker room, he had convinced it nobody believes in you. TCU just beat Michigan, and everybody says they're a team of destiny, and you're just a nobody. And TCU is here to claim its rightful place with football immortality. And he had Georgia convinced that, yep, everybody's against us. They're all loving on TCU, and we're going to go show them.
Yeah, us against the world, right?
Yep. Works every time.
He started up a little bit of that talk early in the week. It's 11 on 11. It's not 11 on 100,000. Or I'm paraphrasing there, but trying to get his guys in the mindset that you win on the road, you win at home. It's the same. It's not the same, and 102,000 will try to make an impact in that way on Saturday. We will be there Saturday. Follow our coverage of the Vols at KnoxNews.com. The run up to the game, certainly during the game, and the coverage after the game, and share this podcast with your fellow UT fans. We'd love for you to subscribe as well, just to make sure that you never miss an episode of us. And thanks for listening to this episode of The Volunteer State.